Odds are, you've probably seen this clip making the rounds online lately, even if you don't watch Smiling Friends.
Guess time.
But what if I told you this meme is actually the show dangling a secret plot thread right in front of our faces? Now, if you're a seasoned viewer of Smiling Friends, I know you're probably thinking, Smiling Friends ain't one of those cartoons with deepest lore and an overarching story. This is something to throw on when you're stony baloney with your friends and eating some pizza, where the stakes are low, but the insanity is always at an all-time high. It's goofy, it's fun, it embraces absurdity, and it wants to make us laugh more than anything. And while all that is true, this isn't Rick and Morty or Venture Bros. Let's not forget that the show does have continuity. These adventures and the few moments of character development that happen in them do matter. They stick and are referenced in other episodes.
It's not just a one-off thing. It seems like you're often like this. Well, it was the same with Desmond, wasn't it? I had to get you motivated for that.
Hell, we're only 2 episodes into the new season, and we already have a sequel episode to Mr. Frog, where Homie returns and becomes president. Things aren't always hand-waved or reset to 0 in Smiling Friends. So the idea of them setting up the storyline that lingers in the background, only to pop out and take us by surprise later on in the show, isn't that outlandish. And on that note, let's talk about Mr. Boss, the head honcho of Smiling Friends Incorporated, who, in spite of the trust he places in his employees, seems to be harboring a huge secret from them. That secret being a corrupted alter ego, one that might have been born from substance abuse. Yeah, I'm serious. To say there's something wrong with Mr. Boss would be a massive understatement. He's a kind, jovial dude whose heart is in the right place. I mean, he's dedicating his life to making people smile. You can't get more wholesome than that. Yet, he also tends to be the definition of sus. He's feasted on Alan's worms. He's feasted on the limbs of the forest demon. Some of his fits are definitely HR violations. He's just very, peculiar. Hey, maybe that's just who the guy is. An oddball who's not hurting anybody. But then there's moments where he definitely isn't acting like himself at all. The obvious example being his B story in Frowning Friends. Once he learns about their new competitors, bro is overwhelmed with jealousy and starts tweaking. He locks himself in his office, hallucinates who I guess he perceives as 3 financially savvy figures: Warren Buffett, Ronald Reagan, and America's sweetheart, Mr. Peanut. They try to offer him advice, but it only agitates him more, drawing out his violent tendencies. As if the hallucinations weren't bad enough, things escalate even further as Mr. Boss goes full Green Goblin, conversing with his reflection, who appears to be the manifestation of the boss's intrusive thoughts. Let's call this one Mr. CEO. Really lay it on thick that this persona is the evil one. Mr. CEO eggs Mr. Boss on, trying to force him into embracing his dark, twisted desires. Like, you know, murdering the Frowning Friends? Of course, Grim being a little bitch baby causes Mr. Boss to snap out of his bloodlust, and the Renaissance men end up being the ones who put Grim and Gnarly in a body bag. Now, if this was the only time we saw Mr. Boss crash out like this, I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd assume Mr. CEO was just a one-time bit. They were just tapping into their inner Willem Dafoe in the writer's room that day. But then the first episode of season 2 comes along, and if you ask me, blatantly continues the storyline at the very beginning and very end of the episode. As Charlie and Pim are on their usual stroll to the office, Pim opens up to Charlie about being cornered by Mr. Boss, claiming that the employer began mumbling strange phrases in a foreign language, before screaming over and over as if he was caught in a loop. As if this wasn't creepy enough, Charlie reveals that he hasn't seen dear old Mr. Boss in a week. Fast forward to the end of the episode, and it appears that Mr. Boss's absence can be chalked up to the motion capture work he did for the Smash clone that Adult Swim should invest money into making a real thing. But I'm convinced this is just an alibi. It's not the full story. As soon after, Mr. Boss starts tweaking just as Pim described earlier. chanting "Hullaba" over and over in a loop. What sticks out about this moment is that the way Mr. Boss is essentially glitching here is pretty identical to his mannerisms during his Green Goblin episode in Frowning Friends. Just missing some motion blur, which is probably just a technical thing. Speaking a mysterious language, glitching out and having an evil alter ego that wants you to commit mass murder, it gives off the vibe that Mr. Boss is literally fighting demons, i.e. possession. Maybe dark magic has a role. It's something that caused his inner darkness to manifest as his Mr. CEO character, who's now fighting for control as the dominant personality. We just got another glimpse of this plot thread in the second episode of Season 2. Mr. Boss once again displays homicidal tendencies, slipping in and out of his alter ego who speaks with a deep, sinister voice. And once he stops trying to deny his intrusive thoughts, stating in his normal voice that he'd actually take matters into his own hands if Mr. Frog won the election, he goes mute and enters a deep thought. And straight up, he looks disappointed in himself. Like he doesn't want to give in, but is losing his drive to fight. They make it a point to have Pym, Alan, and Glep react to this strange tangent. They're alarmed that their boss seems to be clearly spiraling, entering another episode. Their concern being pretty consistent with what they witnessed at the end of the Gwimbly adventure. And once Mr. Frog gets elected, Mr. Boss's demeanor switches up entirely, as he heads out for a headshot that'll make Oswald look like an amateur. The dude looks like he's in a daze, as if Mr. Boss is no longer behind the steering wheel, and instead, Mr. CEO tagged in. At this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if a few more episodes in this season sprinkles in moments of this alter ego, before giving us a big payoff in either the season finale or next season. But on that note, where is all of this going? Okay, Mr. Boss developed dissociative identity disorder, so what? He's not special. Take a number, buddy. Well, I think Mr. CEO is going to tie into something that's been brought up before in Smiling Friends: dopamine rushes and substance abuse. There are two instances in the first season where Charlie touches on the dangers of vices and being trapped in a cycle of dopamine rushes.
I got stuck in a vicious dopamine cycle. Seems like you're unmotivated to do things because you're stuck in a loop of short-term dopamine rushes.
Unfortunately, well, that's facts. It ain't stopping me or Satan from hitting E.O. Benjamin, you feel me? Bringing this up twice in conjunction with Mr. CEO being thrown into the mix kinda makes me think there could be a connection. Like maybe all this weird demonic shit is happening as a result of Mr. Boss's own vices and being trapped in his own cycle of dopamine rushes. Especially since the Green Goblin vibes feel very intentional. I mean, for Christ's sake, Mr. Frog just used a goblin bomb in the President episode. Clearly they're fans of the Raimi films. And Green Goblin in itself tends to be an allegory for addiction and substance abuse. Again, with everything laid out on the table, my read on the situation is that Mr. Boss got involved with some cult-like shenanigans that allowed this evil alter ego to develop. But honestly, I'm less interested in how Mr. Boss ended up like this, and I'm more curious as to why. If this is the result of substance abuse, amplified to the highest degree, what sent Mr. Boss down this path in the first place? Well, not to make an addiction sound wholesome, but I think the most likely answer is that he simply wants to be the best boss possible and thought whatever manifested Mr. CEO would help him achieve this. He tried to enhance himself, a la the Goblin Green, and it backfired horribly. But now he's addicted to whatever the hell is tormenting him, and I have a feeling that the only people who will be able to help him will of course be the Smiling Friends, his employees. And I mean, this being the reason would kinda track. What set him off in the Frowning Friends episode was competition. He felt as if his business was threatened. And if Mr. CEO was the one who started eating the forest demon in the Halloween episode, you could chalk that up to the accusation of blackface. At his Halloween party? That's a PR nightmare! And he made sure to put an end to that shit real fast. As for what the payoff to all of this will be, maybe we'll have a wacky status quo change that sticks for a little bit. Mr. CEO taking over as the dominant personality for an episode or two. Maybe Mr. Boss will be forced into taking a leave of absence, causing someone else to take over as the boss for a while. whether that be someone like Alan or a new character entirely. Could be a fun way to parody all the times TV shows have tried to replace a fan favorite character with someone who doesn't have the same amount of sauce. We're all thinking about The Office or That 70s Show, right? Knowing Smiling Friends, there are so many ways that this plot point could wrap up or expand, and I'm sure it'll be entertaining and weirdly existential no matter what happens. But as always, these are just my thoughts and I'd love to hear yours. What are your theories around Mr. Boss and Mr. CEO? Do you hate fun and insist that it's just a goofy bit that won't go anywhere? Let us know in the comments below, and keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Insta at OstricVox and at Roundtable Vids. And if you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya!